Welcome to Love You Bro podcast. I am your host, Jude Devella, as I'm always doing it every week up with my little brother, Jamie.
What it do?
What's up, brother?
What's up, man?
Hey, man, we have a special guest on tonight, man. Mr. Will Gregory here in Kansas City.
KC legend, Will Gregory.
Yeah, man. KC legend, PR man. Will, we appreciate you taking the time out to come on Love You Bro tonight.
Of course.
Yeah,
I'm a super fan, so this is like hitting the lottery.
I love it, man.
No, this is hitting the lottery, man. I was like,
Yeah.
I ran into you. I was like, the first thing I was like, you've got to come on here. And you're like, yeah. I was like, no, man.
I was like, surely I can get you better guests than
no
me.
way, man. It's a legend, man. We're stoked to have you on. And I mean, someone that's seen, the kind of the development of Kansas City and everything that's happened, and with sporting organizations and stuff that's gone.
Yeah.
You've been been here in the groundwork and a big part, and a guy that I've always respected, from day one, of just everything that you've done in the city and everything you continue to do. So thank you again, man. Stoked to have you on.
Love you, bro.
Yeah, love you, bro. Exactly.
Well, part of the reason Jamie and I, when we got into this, we've been doing, I've been doing athlete logistics the last 22 years of pro athletes. Jamie's always been in the restaurant bar industry, so he's always got kind of his pulse on that. As you know, my boy's always got his pulse on the fashion style and all the drip and stuff that he wears. But we kind of got our way in Kansas City of just really loving the things that we do and watching everything that goes on in the city. And so Jamie and I were talking. He was like, man, he's like, Will's done so much in this town, and we really need to get him on the show. So we're excited to have you on and tell some of your story and tell us some of the stuff that's coming on in Kansas City, because our show is about not just sports. At first people are like, oh, they've got a Chiefs podcast. We're like, no, it's not a Chiefs podcast. Yeah. It's a sports and everything going on in Kansas City. So who better to talk about everything going on in Kansas City than Will Gregory?
I guess.
So modest.
Speaking of fashion, I was, I'm looking at clips, everything he's wearing. I'm like, I'm so nervous. What am I going to wear? Does this look like I'm a poser? Like, what? I think I changed outfits 3 times.
Clean, man.
The first thing I told you, you got to get merch.
Yes.
Now you got it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
The first thing I comment on was your J's. I love those, man. They're clean as J. Yeah.
Hey, a matter of fact, guys, we've been talking for a long time, and we now have our guy Tommy O'Donnell at Specialized Printing, who is dropping. We're dropping our merch store tonight on this episode. So, Will Gregory, you're the first here to be when we drop the store. So we got a sweatshirt, the one I'm wearing today. We got one for Will. So we got Love You Bro. Everybody that comes on gets a Love You Bro.
I appreciate it.
Some merch, yeah. And
then we wearing this tomorrow.
Yeah, awesome. And then we have a gift card to you from Lula's.
Awesome.
Bradley and Brittany Gilmore, awesome here. So
delicious.
Got a gift card for you too. So Jamie, go ahead, man.
Yeah.
Dive right in.
So back to Kansas City.
Yeah.
Like I probably met you maybe 5 years into what I do,
Sure.
but I got started. You're not gonna like to hear it, but I was a Mizzou grad and a Mizzou fan.
MIZ, I'm all about it. Yeah.
And then I got my first job in St. Louis, so kind of like sleeping with the enemy, promoting downtown St. Louis,
Sure.
when really I'm such a KC homer.
Right.
And then at that time, St. Louis was cooler. It was better.
Sure.
It had more stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, 25 plus years later, and I think a lot of people coming to Kansas City for Royals games or Chiefs games or whatever, they're like, I wish St. Louis was like Kansas City.
Yeah. Right.
So we've flipped the script on that.
What do you think what do you think the reason is? Because you're so true. Back in the day, going to St. Louis, they almost turned up their nose at Kansas City as far as
100%.
culinary,
They did for a while.
obviously sports teams.
Yeah.
But it was just, it was almost kind of intimidating. I remember going to Panic shows in St. Louis, at the Fox Theater, and you'd run into people and they're like, oh, Kansas City, blah, you suck. And it was like, and at that time, the Royals were terrible and the Chiefs were terrible. And, there wasn't a ton of places. You had like Stolen Grill and like places that I was stoked about to dine at. But it's just, Kansas City it's gone in this like hyper, intensive, like, pedal to the ground and just start doing shit that's just so cool. Architecture, everything. It's just
since the the early 2000s, for a long time, I feel like Kansas City was like that scene in Goodfellas where Joe Pesci's like, I don't know if you know it or not, but I don't shine shoes anymore. I feel like that's Kansas City now. It's like, hey, I don't know if you know it, but we don't shine shoes anymore. Yeah. So like even at that time when I came back to Kansas City and was doing PR, some of the stuff that was coming online, we had world-class chefs. We had cool shit.
Yeah.
Right.
We just weren't talking about it, or we didn't believe it until we saw it in New York or LA.
Yes.
I'm like, hey, Baldwin Denim Standard Style, Jay-Z's wearing their jeans.
Unbelievable.
Right.
And we're thinking like this isn't world class because it's in Kansas City. Well, it was the whole time. So.
Yeah. And, and to kind of go on that a little bit, when, Matt and Emily were doing their thing and like Jay-Z's like on a USA Today with the camo pants sitting at center court of the Nets arena, as he brought in that. But from what they did at one point in time, you looked and it's like, okay, so the Baldwins were doing that, and then you had the Wade brothers doing what they were doing, and like shooting Ronaldo commercials.
Blue Stem.
Yeah, and Blue Stem and Colby,
James Beard restaurants all over the place.
Which is it was amazing. As I was in there one night, and Colby's working at getting sidetracked here, but this is a funny story. And I'm like, it was kind of like 9:00, a little bit later in the lounge, and I'm like, what are you doing? I'm surprised to see him. And Colby and I grew up together since we were 10 years old. And he's like, oh, Beckham's coming in. I'm like, what?
I was there that night.
Yes, you were
I've
there.
got a picture from that.
Yes, you were. Yeah. I do remember you guys being there that night. That's crazy. And I was like, I'm like, David Beckham? And Leah, my wife, was like, are you like, David Beckham's coming in? He's like, yeah, he'll be in any minute now with the guy from Sprint. Yeah. And so then he walks in. Yeah. Marco. Yeah. Then he walks in, he walks in and like looked as cool as you could ever imagine him being cool. But KC, so, you had that going on, like I said, from culinary to, like Huff projects, and Huff's doing super cool things. It's all Kansas City. And it's like, holy shit, they're getting national recognition.
We had Google Fiber first in the country,
super
high speed internet.
Yeah. No, for sure.
It was here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then not too long after that, our sports teams start ramping up too. So you got Sporting coming out of nowhere. You get the Royals starting to get great. Right. And then, not too long after that, the Chiefs. Yeah. And now the Monarchs too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And all innovative, Mark Brandmeier, shout out to him and good family friend of ours.
Shout out to Mark and KC Monarchs, man. We'll get to do some stuff with Mark over there.
I did bring
KC Monarchs.
So, I've got 2 hours of material.
Yeah,
so
I
can talk all day.
We got as long as we need, my brother.
Mark Brandmeier and Mark McKee hired us to do PR for what was then, they had just purchased the T-Bones.
Okay.
T-Bones were kind of on the decline. Not much had gone on at that stadium. They were kind of on their way out. So, I don't know what the deal was to buy the team, but they bought the team.
Sure.
And they were, halfway into the, the time when they would need to decide what they were going to do with the team as far as a name. And it was too far down the road to change the name at that point.
Of course.
Even though they really wanted to. And, because of COVID or whatever. So, luckily, there's this COVID pause, and they get time to change the name. So they were going to do a contest, and one of the top names, honestly, was the Burn Ends. I'm like, I'd wear a Burn Ends shirt or a Burn Ends hat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like T-Bones never resonated because it wasn't a Kansas City specific product or thing. But Burn Ends is a Kansas City thing. So we're batting that around. That was one of the ideas. But there was a beer vendor. I don't know what his name was, but he just happened to be in the building one day. He's like, you guys should call it the Monarchs. I'm like, yeah, it's cool, but we'd never be able to get it from, the rights to it.
Yeah, of course.
But that is what they did. And they had, some...
Which is so incredibly cool.
Deep conversations with Bob Kendrick and ended up getting that deal done.
What did Bob Kendrick play in that?
Instrumental. Like if Bob didn't allow that to happen, it wouldn't have happened. Sure. So part of the deal was that they would do a satellite, kind of pop-up museum out there at the stadium, but then also that the Monarchs would give them, I think it ended up being like $100,000 over time.
Sure.
That's awesome.
For the museum. Yeah. So it worked out great for both parties. And, we did that press conference to announce it. I was like, it's cool in Kansas City. ESPN was there, the Athletic, national media covered that story. So it was great. Anyway, the very first year, they win the freaking World Series of their league, and that's the ring.
Oh, that is awesome,
cool.
man.
That's really cool. That is really cool.
That is awesome.
The Monarchs have done a great job out there. Mark and their team of people out there, going out there. It's so fan friendly and family friendly out there at the Monarch Stadium. Super cool. They've done such a great job with their family and stuff out there.
Yeah.
But how cool is this, man?
Still
KC
are, and they've
Monarchs
got-
ring for their first championship there at the Monarchs, man. That is super cool, man.
And they've got big plans for that stadium, so
Yeah.
stay tuned on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And for the
awesome.
and the naming, obviously it was extremely catchy for people, and it's like, whoa, it's the Monarchs, and it was like
It
once again-
automatically ramped up their merch.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh
just took
yes.
off.
I mean,
I've got hats and
Mahomes showed
jerseys.
up in his
Yes, yes,
jean shorts
same
and
here.
his Monarchs.
Yes. Monarchs jersey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was
That's
like,
tight.
but it was super cool. And last week, we had Jake Davis on. Thank you for that
Yeah.
assist. That
Absolutely.
bounce
Well,
pass.
thank you for that, my
Jake
brother.
was awesome. But I was telling him, because I'm like, when the Wizards, he was probably 6, 7
So I've got a
years
story
old.
about that too.
Yeah. And, when Sporting went to, Sporting Kansas City,
Yeah.
they were so far ahead of their time.
They
And once
really
it-
were, and I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
We were doing some work for Sporting at the time, just some one-off PR things. They had the freaking dragon mascot, just like all over the place. I thought, oh, Wizards.
Yeah.
Which
Love that
they are,
colorway,
these
too.
are new. They still make these.
I
So,
was going to say
love,
that's
dude.
the old
That's so
throwback,
sick.
man. I love
but
that.
they were like, yeah, can you help us get some people to, we're going to do the announcement of the team at Power and Light, which they did. We're going to drop the curtain and announce the name. And the name, as it turns out, when they told me, they're like, yeah, we're going to call it Sporting Kansas City. I was like, what a freaking disaster. This is terrible.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are we doing, guys?
Yeah.
I didn't know what they knew, which was in Europe. That's a big thing, like
Yeah,
Sporting Lisbon,
sure.
whatever. So, I was behind the eight ball
Yeah.
on that one.
No,
And it turns out that their merch automatically ramps
Yeah,
up. They
absolutely.
do, a bunch of cool stuff.
And
So,
they're obviously, and that's just such a first class organization, as from
Yeah.
top to
Yeah.
bottom,
Yeah.
and what they do. And, but yeah, it was like, so many people, I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
like, you go back and listen to like talk radio and they're like, this is so stupid. It's the worst shit ever. This is, who would ever name
Yeah.
it that?
Right.
But it was like, they were so far ahead of the curb and, hit it out of the park. Just like, once again, Mark, did like, by going like Monarchs, and it's like, it's kind of like in conversation, like going to the Monarchs game, which for like, I didn't hear a lot of people like going to the T-Bones game.
Right, right,
it was
right.
completely
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
and completely.
and like Sporting at that time builds a state-of-the-art stadium, like best in class.
Yeah, Jake
the
was talking about
country.
that last week. How cool their stadium is, and like when they go around the league, like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like how state of the art Sporting is.
And then, Current doing the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
Which is amazing. That
Hats,
place.
hats off
yeah.
to the KC Current.
in a lot of
and
ways,
the
our
Longs out there.
sports, even the facilities are leading
Yeah.
the country.
Which
so.
is amazing. Which once again, if you could have said that 15 years ago, you'd been like, no, that's or 20 years ago. It just wasn't a place. Kansas City wasn't a place. I mean, we had Kemper Arena. We were sure trying to do the Big 8 tournament from at Kemper, and it's like,
Yeah.
Jesus. And I would always say, when they were going to do Sprint Center, like somebody would be like, that's bullshit. Why? And I was like, I don't know. Like when I was younger, I would go to Power and Light to, certain venues, but back in the day, we'd go to the Big 8 tournament, and there was either grandmas or Sateras that you'd go down to, and all these people would come in town, and it was almost embarrassing. Like, there's a tent up there; it's about to blow down because it's kind of
and
cold.
same with,
Yeah, no.
I remember when I started working with some guys here in town when Mayor K. Barnes was pushing for the arena.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like these people that were like against it, and they were like, why would we build an arena without
We already
a tent?
have an arena.
And I'm like, are you guys kidding me? Why would we build an arena?
Yeah.
I'm like, all the revenue that's going to generate in bars, restaurants, and hotels and everything, like, how can you want this armpit Kemper Arena now, which we had a lot of great times in Kemper, but how would you want those, that to be your spot when people are coming in town?
And then they build Sprint, now T-Mobile, with like a hockey or NBA team in mind. But they've been so successful at concerts that
Right.
it's not
Yeah.
worth it now to,
No.
Right.
to even put a team.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, they've done a great job. So let's go back a little bit to what we were talking about before. And I talked to Jamie about this a lot. It's just the transformation of everything. I just remember him all the time because Jamie's always been, like I said, his handprint kind of on keeping the tabs on what's going on restaurant bar wise and stuff. And he was like, dude, there's so many cool chefs in town and all this stuff. Let's talk a little bit more about the transformation. Like we talked about, when did kind of all that really take place? Do you think, well, like with the restaurant industry and some of these cool places that have come in Kansas City and seeing the growth, has it been, I know the sports teams have helped, but we started having that growth before the sports teams started becoming good.
Yeah.
Right?
Early 2000s, it's kind of started. I left St. Louis, came back here, did PR for Kansas City Public Library. I jumped 2 blocks to be public affairs for the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, right over here. which is kind of an oxymoron because the Fed doesn't want any public affairs whatsoever.
Zero, yeah.
Then I was at Mid-America Health, became Coventry, and then my last real job was in-house PR for Fairmont Hotels, which Intercontinental used to be Fairmont. Yeah. And then walking out the door, I had like 2 or 3 clients. The number one client I had was Blonde.
One of the best. They'll never be touched.
Wow.
And Blonde was like the Studio 54 of Kansas City for 2 or 3 years.
Oh my God! It
Like
was
just printing money.
Yeah.
And a lot of athletes showed up at Blonde. A lot of athletes got thrown out of Blonde.
Yeah.
And I do remember distinctly Carl Peterson having a meeting that, I mean, we can talk about it now, but having a meeting with, the ownership group saying, look, if another Chiefs player gets let in here, we're going to get you shut down. It's because of everything that was going on inside of Blonde.
There was a,
So Blonde was kind of like one of those lights of Kansas City, like first one to do bottle service. You got $30,000 millionaires, in there buying $200 bottles of Grey Goose, spending their whole paycheck.
Yeah. And I say this, once again, being an, old head like I am, that was the coolest. That was ahead of its time and what it looked like and what it felt like. Yeah. And I remember going there. My jam would be to go to Reverse to start Thursday night, start at Reverse, have a couple of cocktails, and then slide down to Blonde.
Kona Grill, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe kind of on the way, so depending on where you park. But walk down there. But I would love, and I would say this to everyone who'd listen, like, some nights you would walk and the line would be wrapped around by Jack Stack.
I had to turn off my phone on Friday and Saturday.
I bet.
Because people calling saying,
texting, can you get me in?
He won't let me in.
Like,
what am I supposed to do about it?
That's our boy, Pete, Big Pete.
But it was, but it was so cool. Because some nights you would walk in there and there'll only be 75 people in there, and so many people that they just handled it right, and it was handled like. There'll never be another blonde to that magnitude. And once again, I remember like Christina Aguilera being up on the balcony up there, and like these, like once again,
celebs went to Blonde.
Yeah,
athletes, all the baseball teams stayed across the street at Fairmont. Or,
the Yankees fans would come over. Yeah, but Thursday nights, because me doing what I did with the players, the Chiefs thing on Thursday. I mean, I started getting calls, during their break on Thursday of being like,
"Can you get me in the Blonde?
Yeah, can you give me a table?" And it was like, it wasn't one guy, it was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There wasn't that many tables in there.
They had bottle service. They were one of the first bars that I'd ever heard. I was like, what?
Yeah.
That Red Bull paid them to put the can on the bar whenever they served a Red Bull vodka.
Oh, wow.
They cut them a check every month just to set the can out. It's blowing my mind. Yeah.
I had a funny, one night I was in there in Blonde, and walking towards the back, the bathroom, said one bathroom up top and the rest of them downstairs. I was walking down, and I look over, and Willie Roaf, All-Pro, Hall of Fame, one of the best top 2 or 3 tackles in football, just ripping heaters.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's fucking smoking cigarettes like that? And he's a big man. I mean, he's every bit of, 300 pounds, and was just burning heaters. And I was like, that doesn't fit the training table resume I've seen. But I kind of saw, as we all
that was did. Like one of the first indicators, like, I think we could be a real city. We've got a real bar. Like, it's not the only thing that was happening at that time, but
those Thursday nights, you'd have the Bentleys parked out front, the Range Rovers, the Bentleys, and you were like, this is Kansas City. You're like, this is KC. And that bar wasn't that big, but Thursday nights just killed it there.
And then, it did create a vacuum for a while, but it did help put the city, and especially downtown, on the map, but Power and Light when it opened.
Right.
And we did a lot of those openings, including Mosaic, which was,
Because some of those guys left Blonde and went to Mosaic, right?
Yeah. And so for a while, everything shifted downtown, and it's kind of evened out over the years, but it just helped having an anchor downtown, because at that time there was not.
Right.
There just wasn't. Nothing was going on downtown.
Have you been able to see the new Mosaic yet? The revamp they did there?
Yeah. I'm a fan of everything Eric does.
My boy Eric kills. How my boy Eric, everything good over there?
Yeah. It's cool. So the light system alone is worth popping in there to see.
Yeah. So we're talking to Eric.
Love Eric, man.
And Ashton about doing something over there in the lounge and shooting one of our shows.
They should be doing your bumper music. Like,
100,
man.
That's 100%.
They need a house DJ over here to the side. Cutting in and out of breaks.
When we get big enough, we will do that. We will have a little DJ here and there. when we start growing this thing a little bit. But right now we're just having fun with this thing, man. Like I said, we appreciate you like being here tonight, man, hanging out with us and chopping it up about KC.
Of course.
Yeah. So what are you most excited about right now? What's going on in the city? If you want to, I know it's a kind of open-ended big question, but like.
So, I'll mention this. I chair for the mayor and the city essentially a charity for the city called Neighborhood Tourism Development Fund, NTDF. If you're a charity, a 501c3 charity that resides in Kansas City and you're doing an event in Kansas City, you can apply to the city for funds for your event. Anything temporary, rentals, marketing, temporary employees.
That's cool, man.
Signage.
It's really cool.
A lot of people don't know about it, but I'll tell you this. We just finished this year's round, and we're funding 330 events next year for about $3.5 million.
Wow. That's awesome.
And those range from like, a neighborhood that's wanting to do, a festival to Boulevardia,
Sure.
basketball tournaments, whatever it is. If you're a charity and you have an event in Kansas City, you can apply for funds. So I would tell people you should be doing that. So that gets me excited when I'm seeing these events come through to know
that's so
what.
cool.
And, for 2026, which we're already looking ahead to, you got World Cup.
Yeah. Which is, I definitely want
It's
to touch
like,
base with
and
you
I
on
don't
that.
even know. I don't know that the city is ready, honestly.
No, I said that. I
was
said
just
that.
here to ask Will, do you think Kansas City is ready for World Cup?
We got a lot to do, man. It's like hosting multiple Super Bowls.
That's exactly what I've said, man. That's crazy.
I'm worried about the transportation piece, man. I don't know if we got
plus
the
all the teams practicing, training. Their fans are here. Just general fans of soccer are here, just taking over the
how many
town.
t- how
I don't
many-
think it's not going to be like NFL draft,
Right.
like where it's just
No.
everything in one spot.
Yeah.
It's going to touch the whole city. So.
How many teams will be here at that time when we're hosting the World Cup? How many teams will be in Kansas
And we have
City?
8 teams.
Yeah. Hey,
We'll
yeah.
have 8 teams
And we have
here?
a quarterfinal here.
We'll have 8 teams here?
Yeah, multiple games at Arrowhead. I mean, they're redoing Arrowhead. You know that.
Yes,
right?
I know they're
Like,
redoing
taking
it,
out
yeah.
the lower level of Arrowhead just to accommodate
Yeah.
the field.
And
Not the entire lower level, but
right.
And
They're
I'd
doing,
said
like,
this
replaceable seating, aren't they?
last time, a couple episodes ago, that I'd heard that they were worried that might not even have the stadium. I'm like, there's worry.
yeah. No, I
behind the
think
scenes.
that's all gonna get taken care of.
I think it will. You get the right people at One Arrowhead Drive. I don't think they're going to fall on their
But
face.
that's
on this
massive.
one.
Like Denver didn't get World
Yeah.
Cup. We have World Cup.
Yeah.
Like it's just another one of those things. It's like, we used to think that we weren't these kick-ass cities, but we are.
Absolutely. 100%.
So, and especially in soccer.
Yeah.
So I think we've showed that. Excited about that. Just the groundswell of events in general, but also around World Cup. And then I do think that streetcar getting done is gonna be very helpful
Yes. Yeah.
for creating that north-south corridor. Like as you can see, like everywhere it touches turns to gold. Basically,
100%.
it's just like up, like
Of course.
old buildings suddenly become cool restaurants.
right.
Like it's going to be the entire route. So.
Yeah. And it's cool to see it, like, like you said, kind of it brings life into all these buildings, and it feels like a big city. It feels like a city that's like, it's, and everyone's went through it. We've, Seattle did, 30, 40 years ago. Denver did 20, 30 years ago. And it's like, it feels like that. Like, if I always say this, if I was in my 20s, I would be living down here.
Yeah.
The project you work on, like
Yeah.
one light, like that's what I would be doing, man. It's like that would be my life. And it was like, when it was not an option. It was like you could live on the plaza and everyone lived right across from Reverse or
You
whatever.
couldn't live, work, and play downtown. And
No.
now you can do all of that.
Yeah,
So.
now you
Which
can
is
do all those
amazing.
things. Back in the day, I used to work for a company called Labor Ready, doing staffing, and I went and spent about 6 months in Denver during the time when they built Coors Field, and just watched that whole revitalization of their downtown and all the breweries and all the stuff. And it was like, I told Jamie, I'm like, God, why can't Kansas City do this, man? It's so cool what they're doing down here when they built Coors Field.
Populous, that's another one we talked about.
Yes.
There's an architecture firm here in Kansas City, Populous.
Sure.
They did that field, but they are doing stadiums all over the world. Like
Yeah.
they did 2 of the Qatar World Cup stadiums.
Yeah.
They're doing the Chiefs and Royals stuff.
Yeah.
They redid the Kentucky Derby, Churchill
Yeah.
Downs.
And that's
they're
another
right here in
thing.
Kansas City.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like talk about like Populous, and then Manica, and Manica's
He did the
stuff-
Raiders stadium.
Yeah, Raider and the Dolphins place that he's done. Like once again, Kansas City based people that are doing stuff that matters in not only like the sports world, but just in general, the building these stadiums and doing stuff. They're all back here in Kansas City, and once again, like you said, it is a thing that we are like a big city.
Yeah.
It's like before you kind of like, where are you from? Kansas City. Now it's like, fuck, I'm from KC, man. Super Bowl champions. I mean, all the shit that we're doing, it's like KC. It's like you wear it loud and proud because it's been a long time since we've been able to do that.
Yeah. And sports, I think, has been the icing on the cake for that.
Sports has been huge for sure because you go and look at the Royals when they were relevant, 14, 15, when they were kind of making that push. And then right after that, the Chiefs kind of follow up with, starting to get good, starting to get, the guys drafted that we have here now. And I think the sports has played a huge role in just the revitalization. I mean, the Monarchs going and winning a title, I mean, those are cool things in Kansas City to watch and go and see our city do. It's been a lot of fun watching their growth and seeing what everything's going on in Kansas City.
I remember when Mahomes signed his contract and I did a TV interview for it. They're like, what does that mean to the city? And I was like, man, it means everything. Like, this is the future of the NFL. And he's said, yeah, I'm committed to staying in Kansas City, raising my family in Kansas City. And then you get Kelsey staying and keep building pieces.
Right.
And so that contract just had so much value to the city
100%.
for not just sports, tourism in general,
Right.
people willing to move here to take jobs in Kansas City. It's huge.
Yeah.
I've been blessed, Will, like I said, the last 22 years to do work with the athlete side of it, right? And one of the things Jamie and I have talked about is, back in working in, 06, 07, 08, 09 with the guys I worked with then, guys would come in, they'd play their seasons here, and boom, they'd boogie out, go back home because there was nothing going on here. Where you see these guys now, and especially Patrick, especially Travis, I've been blessed to do a little bit of work with both of them. I told Jamie that they're here, they're rooted here. They're making hey, I'm gonna have a home here. They'll always have a home in Dallas or wherever their off season stuff is to do. But they spend so much time here, and all the money they're putting in with their charities, their foundations, all the money they're re-putting back in the city to do big things here. I think says a lot about what Kansas City's doing, and a lot about the athletes that are here now, wanting to continue building Kansas City.
We didn't mention hockey.
No, you're right.
No, and I'm
Mavericks have also won a championship in
Right.
the last few years.
Absolutely.
So Lamar Hunt Jr., team owner.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Amazing.
It's awesome. When we come back, we're gonna take a little break here. We'll come back. We're gonna talk
Take
about
some callers.
Yeah, take some
Take
callers.
some
Right.
callers.
976 102, the fifth caller. But about some of the things that you've worked with, like the hats you're wearing, which is huge and like massive, and
Let's talk Big Slick.
yeah,
Let's talk
which is
Big
massive.
Slick, man. Let's
we
talk
we
Big
come back.
Slick.
We'll
Let
get
Thunder
into that.
Gong first.
And Sudeikis and what these guys are doing. They've also done some amazing things. So we're going to take a break right now. Then we're going to come back with our man, Will Gregory.
Thanks.
Guys, we'd like to thank our resident sponsor, Proactive Solutions. They've been with us from day one. They allow us, Love You Bro podcast, to get to do what we do each and every week, and that's bring you a new episode with new guests. So a big shout out to Dean and Natalie Thede at Proactive Solutions. Proactive Solutions has been delivering infrastructure solutions and IT design and consultation services to clients ranging from startups to Fortune 100 companies for more than 27 years. They are proud to be a Kansas City locally owned and a top woman-owned business, offering custom solutions and personalized support. So thank you to Proactive Solutions, Dean and Natalie. If you guys are interested and your company needs some IT solutions, reach out to Proactive Solutions at www.proactivesolutions.com. We have two great resident sponsors that really help us here at Love You Bro Podcast and allow us to do what we get to do week in and week out. Lula's Southern Cookhouse, Bradley and Brittany Gilmore, owners of Lula's. It's at 1617 Main Street. If you have not been down here, please come down on a Sunday and have brunch. Great wait staff, great bartenders. The ownership team with Bradley and Brittany Gilmore are just fantastic people, and they allow us to do what we get to do in this amazing event space at Lula's Southern Cookhouse. All right, man, we're back on set with our man Will Gregory and Jamie. I think we're just going to jump right in with him, man, on the Big Slick and
Thunder Gong, man.
Thunder Gong, man.
Yeah.
Let's just jump in with that.
Which is the coolest shit Kansas City's ever seen.
Yeah, for
We
sure.
do get to do a lot of fun philanthropic events, and one of those is Thunder Gong. My good friend Billy Brimblecom brought us into that. He is an amputee. His charity is Steps of Faith, and Steps of Faith was founded by Billy and Jason Sudeikis. You've heard of
awesome.
that guy,
Yeah.
And,
Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
and you said you guys just added George Karlaftis to that, yes?
Yeah.
Is that-
Well, we've added him to yet another event that they're going to do in May,
Okay.
like a family game night that Will Forte is going to come in town and
Oh,
host.
that's so cool,
that's
man.
super cool.
So Forte is going to do it, but yeah, Karlaftis agreed
Yeah.
to
I
do
hope
it
I didn't
just
jump the
this
gun
week.
too soon by saying that.
It's public. It's out there.
Okay,
There's-
okay,
I think they're
okay.
selling tickets right now.
Cool,
But,
awesome.
so I had seen Thundergong. I knew it existed, but I really wanted to work on it, and
Yeah.
got the chance a few years back, and we've been doing it ever since. And both Billy and Jason are great, and Thundergong was, born out of the need to fund amputees. Like, as it turns out, thousands of people lose limbs every day,
Right.
and it's not military; it's
Yeah.
just regular
Sure, of course.
Joes or
Everyday
whatever.
life.
And by the way, insurance doesn't really pay for it.
Sure.
Definitely doesn't pay for what you really need, like
Right.
the nice Cadillac of legs. They
Yeah.
they're a lot of states are like, here's some crutches, enjoy the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Don't
Which
get me
is fun.
started on the
you know,
insurance industry,
So,
brother.
Steps of Faith is set up to fund limbs for those in need. And so
awesome.
Jason, by virtue of being friends with Billy, helped out. Billy is a drummer. Billy's in Summer Breeze. I don't know if you've ever seen those
Sure, of
guys.
course. Yeah, man.
He's the drummer in Summer Breeze, which is the house band. And then they bring in celebrity friends from around the country to be part of that every year. And it's different every year. You
Yeah.
know, it's Winona one year.
Yeah.
It's
Super cool.
Nathaniel Rateliff the next. It just depends on the year.
So when is their event this year? When is it?
It'll be in November.
It'll be in November?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. November every year. And yeah, like I said, they've got game night coming up. April's Limb Loss Awareness Month. And so
Where will that be, Will?
that, in May, and it's at the Uptown Theater.
Okay, cool. And that's where Thundergong originally
Thundergong
started,
takes
yeah.
place,
Yeah.
at Uptown. Yeah. And now it's gotten so big that especially with the success of Ted Lasso, which has catapulted Jason,
Yeah.
even farther into stratosphere, it just sells out immediately. And not just Kansas City people, Australia,
Sure.
Europe,
Yeah,
Right.
Canada, all coming
yeah.
and supporting the charity, which is cool.
Which is
So-
awesome. Yeah.
Having those guys from Kansas City, man,
Yeah.
what Jason does and Paul Rudd and Rob
And
Riggle.
Big Slick, Big Slick was around even before that. And Big Slick, at the time, I was doing Harris as a client, and that started out as a poker tournament,
Yeah,
I remember that. I remember
yeah.
that. I
which
remember
is why
that.
it's called the Big
Slick,
Slick.
right.
And then that transformed into the baseball game that it is now. But yeah, another one of those things like, what other city has
Yeah.
Rob Riggle,
Yeah.
Stone Street, Rudd, Sudeikis?
Yeah.
And then throw in John Hamm from St. Louis
Sure.
and Brad Pitt from Springfield. Like, what other? Who else is rolling these guys out and has that celebrity firepower that's willing to come back to their hometown
Yes.
and do a charity event every year?
Right.
A massive charity event.
Every year.
Which is awesome.
This
And
gets bigger and bigger every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's awesome, it's awesome to see those guys, obviously how much they love their city and how much they, are willing to do almost anything to, for those fundraiser stuff. But I can't even imagine. I'm sure you've been on some of the off-camera stuff and humor and banter, that shit. That's like,
They're hilarious.
dude,
And they love hanging out together.
Yeah.
That's
No.
the cool thing. And then Jason, does two events. He does Big Slick and Thundergong. So.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the John Hamm thing for a second. Did
Yes.
anybody else think it was this weirdest shit that he was the one who introduced the Chiefs in the Super Bowl? Because he's from St. Louis, right? I mean, I was looking. I would have rather been a Rudd or a
Yes.
Sudeikis or a Riggle. I mean, seriously, nothing
Yeah, I
against
don't
John
know. I don't
Hamm,
know what went down
but
with that decision. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you're,
Isn't that
you're a
kinda
guy.
weird,
Like,
though?
how would that have happened? Like, obviously,
He's a St.
I
Louis
will say
dude.
he is a very Ham is a very down to earth, chill guy.
Sure.
Like when he's also a big Mizzou fan. So the year that he was here for Big Slick, he didn't. He wasn't like one of the core group of guys, but he was a Mizzou fan. So myself and Joe Zwillenberg, I don't know if you know
Yeah.
Oh,
the
yeah,
flea market
Joe.
guy.
Joe.
Yeah,
Joe and I
Westport Flea
just sat
Market.
with John Hamm and talked about Mizzou for a couple hours.
Sure.
And the next day, we're reading in the paper, John Hamm signs biggest contract ever for television. He didn't even mention it the entire time.
which is so cool. That's
He just
awesome.
wanted to talk about Mizzou
Yeah.
football. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
super nice guy.
That is super cool. So let's talk a little bit more about Big Slick. When is it's in June again? As always, it's in
June or
June.
July? I'm not
I think
totally
it's-
trying
I
to.
think it's July.
I don't think it's that late because
No,
I think
it's
it's
not
too hot. Yeah, I think it's in June.
You guys should have Mark McKee on sometime. McKee
Yeah.
founded Big Slick with his brother-in-law Rob Riggle.
Okay.
But Mark McKee, also co-founder of the Monarchs,
Right.
also founded Pyramid Pizza when he was a
In
student
Lawrence, there you go.
in Lawrence.
There you
It's my
go.
favorite pizza in the
You gotta
world.
have
man.
that guy
Super
on.
cool.
I don't know
Yeah.
how many
For the
times
pizza alone.
No, we'd love
drunk in
to-
Lawrence I got that, and I was like,
We would love to have Mark on. We'd love to have Mark on. We want to bring Mark Brandmeier on. I know we've talked to Mark about doing some stuff over there at Monarchs Field.
So that's gotten bigger and bigger, and now it's in T-Mobile. It's a multi-day deal. They're raising millions of dollars. Great event. So
yeah, no, that's super cool. So being a Tigers fan, are you excited about where the football program is headed? Are you excited about the situation that they're in? How often you get up there and
A lot.
relive your? Were you in a frat?
when I was in college, Mizzou was a basketball school.
Yeah.
And KU and Mizzou were like 1 and 2 in the country
All the
pretty
time.
consistently for
Yeah.
like several years.
Yeah.
And Mizzou's football team was shit at the time.
So was KU's. Yeah.
Now, of late, our football team's kind of been carrying the load, but basketball is coming online. But yeah, how do I feel about it? I love our coach, Drinkowitz. He can be sometimes unnecessarily cocky, but he's backed it up. I mean,
Yeah.
2 10-win seasons in a row, plus bowl wins, plus beating Ohio State
Yeah.
in a bowl. Like, you can't ask for more than that, honestly, in modern football. With the exception that NIL has now leveled the playing field for everybody. So
crazy, man.
been nuts.
that's wild. Both,
let me ask
both
you
football and basketball.
Will you be in Columbia next year when the Jayhawks come to town?
Oh, yeah.
How? Yes, exactly. And how cool is that?
Wait,
And-
I think it is. Yeah, it's in
Columbia,
Lawrence.
yeah.
No, I think it's Columbia the first year.
The first one's in Columbia?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's in
okay.
Columbia in
It's in
September.
It doesn't matter what. I will be
Yes,
at both.
either
for
one.
sure.
Yeah. And what is cool, and I have, I'm not the KU guy that I have so many Missouri friends, obviously. I don't get in that banter because I think it's great when they're competitive and it's fun, it's good spirited. Just
Hold on,
as
what do you mean? You don't get in the bantering with Missouri fans?
no,
Come on, man. I love that. I love the bantering with Missouri.
I just-
but the
not my jam.
But to me, though, the bantering that's the whole
Yeah.
fun of it. That's
Yeah.
the whole fun of the rivalry.
I
It's
do
not
miss
just-
that. I do miss a little of those Big 8.
Yeah.
Big
that's what I was gonna
12
ask,
days.
of that.
But in our lifetime, Mizzou and KU were 1 and 2 in football,
Right.
and playing at Arrowhead Stadium.
Yeah, was that
Which was
crazy back in
amazing.
07, 08?
They were the front cover of SI.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
I've got
that
the
was-
cover with
yeah.
Chase Daniel on the cover.
Yeah.
And Mizzou won that game, and then ends up you guys go to the Orange Bowl ahead of us because a week later we get blown out by Oklahoma in the conference championship game,
Right, exactly. I
which
remember
now
that.
doesn't even really exist. We would have been,
You guys think about that for a minute. So 2008, Kansas and Missouri football are 1 and 2 in the country and
Playing
at
each
Arrowhead.
other in the
playing
last-
each
yeah,
other
last
at Arrowhead.
game of
The day after Thanksgiving, right?
1
Unbelievable,
and 2
yes.
in the
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 country.
day after
Yes.
Thanksgiving that Friday at Arrowhead, and it was. I remember it was so cold. It was like
I was there
It was
all
snow,
day.
it
I
was snow.
was
I remember it was
literally
snow.
there all day.
freezing
It was
cold.
snow.
And then the Chiefs weren't very good, so you weren't sitting out in that kind of climate for the Chiefs at that point in time.
Yeah, that's right.
Not the majority of the crowd was, but that stadium was packed, and
And it was a great game.
it was great. Yeah, no, and it was just and that's my thing is I
wouldn't mind playing at Arrowhead every year. Honestly.
No, I think
That's
I think
great.
That's
I don't mind doing a home and home, but
Yeah.
I also wouldn't mind if we played at Arrowhead.
I kept thinking when they were first talking about doing the KU-MU rivalry again,
Mm.
I kept thinking they talked about, even in basketball, I kept thinking they talked about Columbia, Lawrence, then T-Mobile. And same thing, I kept thinking they talked football, Columbia, Lawrence, and then Arrowhead, which I think would be great. I think that'd be
Mm. Yeah.
awesome.
But
If they did that.
just like next fall, and I'm not sure the date, but KU-MU will be so incredibly anticipated. The city will be a buzz. Whether obviously so many people obviously will be in Columbia, both KU and MU, obviously predominantly, Missouri fans in Columbia, but the bars, they'll have energy and it's so good for business. And I was when the Big 12 tournament was going on, I had said, K-State had a chance to get in. I go, I don't know the last time in the tournament and in March Madness that K-State, MU, and Kansas were all in at the same time. It's just, and I'm a fan for just what it does for business, and how good
It
it
gives the
is.
city energy, like a pulse.
Yeah,
When those games are coming up and people are talking about it, it's on sports radio every day.
Yeah.
It's on the news every day.
and it's
Yeah.
good. And for me, a lot of people say nationally, college football is better when USC is good, Miami Hurricanes. For me, college basketball is better when MU, KU, and K-State are better. And they're
Same with
playing each
football,
other. And same with football. Like it's just something that I grew up on. And even though we sucked in football when I was growing up, it was always still a thing when you played Missouri. You know, it was always still a thing, no matter how bad your team was or what your team was going through, it was always a big thing. And then basketball, like I said, growing up, it was huge. I remember sometimes I'd have to go to school the next day if KU beat MU on a Wednesday. And it was like a Wednesday in the Big Eight, how big it was. But it was just, it was awesome.
I do miss like having KU as a rival. Like they try to build Tennessee or Arkansas as our rival now.
Yeah,
It's really
not the same.
It's still KU. It's never nobody's ever forgotten about KU.
Yeah.
So and I don't know how you guys feel about it, like having K-State as your rival, but I don't know if the K-State rivalry was ever what it was with.
No, I don't think it's ever been as gritty as the KU-MU rivalry.
So I'm glad the basketball is back, and now now
And
the
Missouri's
football's coming back even better.
Missouri's basketball program is relevant now, and KU's football has gotten better to make it a little bit more relevant. Because Missouri, when they went to the SEC, they took that leap when Drinkowitz, because that dude can recruit.
Well, I mean, it was before.
Their programs legit.
That was Pinkel.
Yeah, Pinkel
was a stud.
Yeah, Pinkel was putting guys in the league left and right. And guys that matter.
We got it handed to us that first year in football. But this year 2 and 3, we were in the SEC championship.
Right.
I don't know if a lot of people know that.
I remember that.
But
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was, I hated, and I understood why they made the move, and from a financial standpoint. But I was like, it's one of those things that, from an SEC standpoint, Missouri will kind of be the stepchild. It will never be the rich and tradition, the Ole Misses.
We're not like the founding. It's like Big Eight. We're not like the
the Georgias,
like
the Alabamas.
Big Eight. Yeah, but every year that changes. So and the more we win, the better it is. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, two 10-win seasons through the SEC. That's no joke.
Oh yeah,
man.
no, absolutely.
No joke.
It's and Drinkovich, he recruits and he gets quarterbacks. He gets quarterbacks. He gets guys that can play, and that was a big thing. After the Chase Daniel, they could not get their quarterback. They could recruit guys on the defensive line, guys on the offensive line. I mean, they're putting guys in the league, Missouri, at the same clip as not a Georgia or an Alabama, but they're right there in the SEC with putting guys in the league that do stuff and that matter.
So Will, what do you think between you and Zwillenberg? Can you guys help us get some Mizzou guys on, man? Some Mizzou people, some Mizzou coaches.
Sure. And I want you guys to be live at our tailgate that day.
Oh my God, that's an awesome idea.
We do a tailgate right against the stadium for every game.
That's an awesome idea.
Do our podcast in Columbia. Yeah, you guys feel like going to Columbia for KU Mizzou? Our production team at KC Podcast Company is great. These guys are great.
Oh shit.
No, they're like, no, that's a great idea.
We were black love you bro sweatshirts to wear that day. They don't even know we're Kansas.
There is a great Mizzou podcast, and I don't know if there's an equivalent on the KU side, probably, but called the Mazadcast.
Uh-huh.
It's two brothers.
Oh, nice, nice,
and it is hilarious.
Yeah,
like Mizzou, the university probably does not enjoy this podcast because of some of the shit they say.
Right.
But it is worth listening to, even if you're not a Mizzou fan. So
yeah, just shoot me out a link.
By the way, they do a segment every episode called Kansas News, where they just rip on Kansas to this day.
See, I can't do that.
That's cool. I love that.
And they read headlines from Kansas newspapers.
Yeah. That's cool.
Hilarious.
I love that. Great
and
idea
really
for
witty.
those guys, man.
I love
Kudos
that.
those guys.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. You wouldn't do it. I'd do it.
No, because
They also do something that you guys should probably do, a segment on betting every week, where they go through and make bets.
Yeah, and lines. Yeah, I always lose.
That's how you can get a casino sponsor.
There you go. Yeah. We need to bring
Let's get ESPN Bet in here.
We need to have Pat Dunn or Tommy Katie be our gambling guru guys, man. 100%. Dunn would love to come on.
Hollywood Casino is one of of our clients.
Okay.
Let's make the introduction.
To you, I will pitch that to Hollywood and ESPN Bet. I will do that.
I love that, man. I love that. Yeah. As you guys see, Will Gregory is our PR man that's going to come on. Like I said, we're excited to work with you, Will. And just
unless something goes wrong, then I do not know these guys. Have nothing to do with this show.
Yeah. Prank caller. Will, before we get off here, tell me about where. Obviously, you're a guy that knows a lot. Thumb to the pulse of everything that's going on. You personally, all shit off the record, where do you want Royal Stadium to go? And why?
100% downtown. I don't care what
Same.
location. I mean, I was fine with Crossroads, to be honest.
Sure.
But Washington Square Park, nobody said boo about that when they announced it.
Which I thought was a dope idea.
Yeah, I don't know that the rollout was the best. Obviously, it was not. It got shot down. But I feel like if the Royals are moving to Johnson County, it's a lateral move. Like, just stay where you are. Either way, you're out in the burbs. I feel like a baseball team, unlike a football team, you don't need the huge tailgate scenario.
Exactly.
And every city I've been in that has a downtown stadium, it's cool.
Yeah.
And it's not just the limited number of games like football. You've got a ton of games going on, and that
82
drives
bits.
traffic.
Yeah.
Go to
82
St.
bits.
Louis. They've
Yeah.
got a mini Power and Light right up against Busch Stadium.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
without, I mean, at one point, St. Louis had football, baseball, and hockey,
Sure.
pro teams
Yeah.
within 1 square mile.
Yep. Yep.
And I thought,
downtown.
and I thought you talked earlier about the streetcar and like how cool and how dope is guys that grew up in Kansas City being able to get off on the streetcar and walk to the state. I'm like,
Or a day game, 1 o'clock game, just like clock out early and walk over to the
so
stadium.
cool, man.
Yeah, that's
so
so
cool.
cool.
Who doesn't want that?
And when you were at Lee's Summit, we were at Shawnee. She's like, if somebody was to tell us that, I'd be like, yeah, right. That would
Yeah,
never
right.
be a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, who? You're full
Yeah.
of shit.
Yeah.
That would never be a thing.
So that's my thought on the Royals. They should be downtown. I think honestly, Sherman wants them to be downtown.
Right.
Yes.
So why they would go to a Johnson County that's been rumored location, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Football, I would like the Chiefs to stay where they are just because of the footprint, and maybe you do a little bit more on the retail, restaurant, hospitality side.
Yeah.
But if one of them has to move to Kansas, I would say go ahead and build it in Kansas.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother. It's equidistant for me. I'm already going to sporting games
Sure.
out
Of
there
course.
anyway.
Right.
Sure.
Right. Right.
Baseball, I want downtown. Arrowhead.
Yeah.
I'm
whatever
right
they
there
wanna
with you. Well, I think the baseball stadium, if they're going to move or they're going to build something new, has got to be downtown. But you see some of these things out there in Kansas that they're proposing with the Star Bonds of maybe building them a $2 billion stadium with a retractable roof and everything over there. I mean, if you go put it there and people are like, "Oh, if I'm a Missouri fan, I'm not going to go." If I'm a Kansas, we're
don't
all
think that's
Kansas
true.
City
Yeah.
fans. We all like you said, we
And
go
look
to
at all
both
the
sides.
Kansas people that come to Missouri.
Yeah, that's what I'm
for-
saying.
100%.
We've been season tickets
So-
since 1965. We lived in Kansas our whole life. We never were
If
like
you,
those
if
are
you
the
want to
Missouri.
build a brand new state-of-the-art stadium in Kansas, great.
Yeah. 100%.
I'm still gonna go.
Yeah.
But I'm with you, and I think that's it's a sentiment I've been from day one is like baseball. Like when the Royals in '85 were great, there wasn't really any tailgating at Royals at Kauffman Stadium, or if the K. It was just you walked in. So now it's not as important to me because I'm not 20, to go out there and toss, play cornhole and do all that shit. But
And there's some of that, but not a ton.
yeah, exactly.
like a Chiefs game.
Not enough to put a stadium downtown, and it gets into this kind of mentality of people being like, "Oh, parking." It's like that's all going to go away eventually anyway. And like a stadium downtown, I think is the biggest winner. I think it's the way to even elevate our city and grow even more is putting a stadium downtown.
Ask Casey Current if building a stadium downtown works. Like,
Yeah, 100%. And the development that's coming up around there, and what's happening with it, and it's like
Hats off to the Longs and the Mahomes, what they're doing with that
Yeah.
KC current team, what they're doing down there with that development.
Yeah,
That
it's
stadium's
amazing,
awesome.
and it's amazing. And like I said, I just wish I would like to talk off the record with people who were. And to me, being a guy that's been in the industry for a long time, we're showing the people that down here in the crossroads that were so against it. And I'm like, I understand, but they would show almost empty places happening with like pool tables and shit. But like, oh my God, you know how much like, no, it was just weird to me that they were like so many people that were like, fuck that movement. That's terrible. This is bullshit. You're putting places out that
Right.
either storage units and or
I mean, those are the same people that said, don't put
100%.
Sprint Center or
Yeah.
don't put Power and Light because you're going to
Yeah.
displace too much parking or what.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here.
No, yeah.
Another thing with the residents and stuff that are around here, like the quarters group coming over and doing the 1 light, 2 light, 3 light. I mean, I saw those buildings going up. I'm like, there's no way people are going to be moving these things. I had to go look over at 3 light. I had a meeting over there the other day looking for a place for one of my players. Everything's sold out.
Yeah.
There's no penthouses. There's no penthouses open.
We can't build enough.
Yeah.
Like,
I couldn't believe it. There was no units open.
Which is super cool to me because it's
Yeah,
like
it's awesome.
it's like I'm super pro development and like you know like when you go to a city like Austin, obviously you've been to Austin numerous times. There's cranes everywhere in Austin, which is dope to me because it's like it
or
means
go to Chicago and try to get a place like that.
yeah, you have to be
That's
Jimmy.
that close to the core of downtown and within blocks of everything happening in downtown.
Well, I remember a guy he came from the Washington Commanders and came to Kansas City, and I was showing him around, and we went to locations, and he was like talking to the realtor, and they were like, "How much is this?" And she said, and he goes, "Dude, I was paying twice this for half this size," and I'm just like, I can't imagine what those guys are paying in those other big cities and markets like that. But Kansas City's got some cool stuff going on with those places over there. There's some really, really cool units on those places. And not even just those units. So there's so many other buildings that you really kind of got to explore a little bit. That's some really cool living space downtown.
Imagine looking out your window and seeing a baseball stadium.
Oh my God.
I mean, that'd be the dopest thing. Like to sit on your balcony and be able to look down at the
Or
stadium.
even just hearing like the crowd.
Yeah, the crowd going.
Just hearing the crowd.
Yeah, the
we're,
crowd
We're
going.
long overdue for a downtown stadium.
Yeah.
Like I said, doing the stuff with Mayor Barnes before they were doing the T-Mobile, and I remember going to all of her events and stuff, and finally getting a T-Mobile and seeing that would be really cool to see a Royal Stadium.
And this,
downtown.
I think it's the move, man. I hope it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But obviously something's got to come up here, soon. Whether know what that decision is, but I would love to see downtown baseball. And then if Arrowhead has to move out, if they got an opportunity,
As long as they've got that footprint to do the tailgating,
100%.
keep that history going.
100%.
Well, tell us what you know a little bit too. I want to touch base a little bit on the development there on the waterfront there where the current is. Do you know much about the development stuff that's going to go on?
Just what I've read, honestly. I've been to a couple current games. Port KC is kind of a driver on that stuff if you look into Port KC, but they're developing that entire riverfront, which honestly should have been done many years ago.
Right.
There's only so much beachfront in Kansas City. That and the Brush Creek are the beach.
Right. Yeah. No.
Right.
So why we weren't building it? Oh, speaking of, so I've got a client.
Okay.
I'm gonna do some client proud.
Yeah. Let's
I
do
love
it.
it, man.
So we were talking about cool shit in Kansas City. There are also Kansas City people that have gone to other cities and open stuff. So there was a chef in Kansas City named Marshall Roth. I don't know if you ever met
Sure,
him.
of course.
He now owns the top steakhouse in Abu Dhabi. Runs
Wow. I did not know that.
steakhouse in the Four Seasons at Abu Dhabi. He went there on a 2-year contract. He's in year 6.
Wow.
Chef from Kansas City.
awesome.
You've got Ted from Room 39,
Yeah.
has a restaurant in Merida in Mexico, north of Cancun.
Yeah.
And then these guys, Dan and Kathy, Grocky and Owen are their last names, but they moved to Tulum to retire and then opened this farm-to-table restaurant. It's called the OGs because her last name is Owens and his last name is Grocky.
Okay.
But it's like in the Brooklyn of Tulum.
I love that.
It is
reference.
a
Brooklyn.
unbelievable farm-to-table restaurant in Tulum.
Have you been down
anyway?
there?
Yeah, several times. But in the process, they've opened a mezcal company.
Whoa.
And the way I met Jamie was in the Port Fonda days. Whenever I'd come in, and I'm just a guy, like I barely know these guys. He's like, "Oh man, hey, come over," and we do a mezcal shot.
Absolutely.
First time I ever had mezcal was then, and at the time, to me, it tasted like tequila that's been distilled through dirt.
It's a required taste
how
for
do people
sure.
drink
It's a
this?
required taste.
This is
Yes,
incredible.
brother.
You
Absolutely.
had some.
Yeah. 100%. That's
So,
beautiful.
So that's client. But then, new client alert. There is a 100-year-old chocolate company in Kansas City, Russell Stover's.
Whoa, look
Yes.
at this
And I
beautiful
brought
box.
you guys
That's awesome.
Oh, brother.
I love
Thank
that,
you.
Stover
man.
product.
That is
so we
awesome.
don't forget about the history of
Thank
Kansas
you,
City.
man. I
too.
appreciate that so
absolutely.
much. That's badass.
I'm gonna get that out
box
of
of
the
the,
way.
uh,
So
Russell
I will
Stover's
say
here.
this.
was
Well,
tight.
I'll probably have some edibles, and then I'll eat like half a box.
Knock yourself out.
Yeah.
That's what it's for.
That's awesome. Thank you, Will.
Thank you so
Sure,
much,
sure.
dude.
That is
That's
so
awesome.
cool.
Well, I saw the sporting guy brought you jerseys last week, and I was like, oh man, I got to bring these guys something.
No, brother. Thank you
man.
so much. And you gave us some great bucket hats and
Yeah, some great bucket
yeah.
hats.
You came bearing too many gifts. We got it.
No,
Yeah, man.
my pleasure.
Well, listen, man, thank you so much for coming on. And listen, just because you've come on once, man, you're gonna be a regular. You're part of the
I'm
Love
gonna
You
get
Bro
you
family.
some better guests. Like, let's
No,
let
dude,
this
you're
be
a
the
legend,
low
dude.
bar.
You're
Let's
like,
get some bigger names.
Hey,
Yeah.
listen, we love having you on. Will, you're gonna sign our. We're gonna have you sign our Love You Bro flag,
Of course.
which we have all of our guests coming on and doing that.
Sure.
But we want you to come on, man. Tell us what's going on in Kansas
Yeah.
City. Doors are always open.
And
We're gonna
before I
invite you back
sign
to come on.
off, going back to Port Valley days, I was walking around. It's like, I think it was your first trip. And it's like, Will Gregory's here, and I was like, who? And like, Will Gregory's in the building. And I was like, okay. And so Patrick's like, there's a lookbook, man. There's a lookbook. Will Gregory's in the lookbook. And I was like, I need a lookbook. It was like, oh, there he is. And like, they're like, okay, he's at table 26. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go by there. And it's like, you were a big deal. Like, you were a big deal. And this was in the days when there was a 3.5 hour wait. It was like, they were like, I was like, yes, get Will. He's like, Will Gregory's here. He's like,
I love it.
I
love it, man.
Probably because I got you guys onto Blonde at some point. That was,
I know.
that was reciprocal.
It was just you're awesome, man. You're like
Sure.
I said in our text today, you're a legend in the city. Thank you so much for giving us, the time. You're a busy guy, got a lot going on. You're getting ready to go on a little trip. Good for you.
Yeah.
Go have fun.
Get
Are you going to ski?
I'm gonna ski at least one day, maybe two.
Okay.
Love
Be
it.
safe.
I mean, these knees.
I know. Be safe and be safe, and we'll get you on.
Listen, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just want to tell you, thank you so much for coming on Love You Bro podcast. Thank you so much for supporting us and watching our podcast and
Just like all these clients I've talked about, like I want Kansas City to be great.
Right.
And I think this podcast is one of those things. So
Oh, my
I'm gonna
God.
help
Thank you
out
so
however
Thank
much,
you,
I
man. It
can.
means a lot to us, brother.
Love
Thank
you,
so
bro.
much,
Sure.
man. Love you, brother. Thank you
see
so
ya.
much for coming on.
Yeah,
man.
thanks for having me.
We're gonna welcome you back on here. So, guys, that's our show tonight, man, with Will Gregory. He's got his pulse on everything in Kansas City, and he's gonna help us push and grow the Love You Bro podcast. So, until next time, man, we're out.
Let's go.